Earth's orbital defenses were failing. 3 of the 50 stations had already fallen, and proxy ships pushed closer to the planet. Commander Eric Patterson watched grimly as another wave of enemy craft approached. "Status report," he demanded. "Shields at 30%, his officer replied. "Drone fighters depleted. Estimated time until defense collapse, 22 minutes. Eric opened a secure channel to the presidential bunker deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. "Madam President, we can't hold them much longer." President Kate Simmons' face showed no fear, only resolve. "The Prometheus Protocol is being prepared, but we need more time. Admiral Ford's fleet is jumping in soon." On her desk sat a simple black box with a DNA lock. Inside was the activation key for humanity's doomsday weapon. A last resort that would collapse the space around Sol system, taking the Roxy fleet with it, but also destroying Earth. In deep space, Admiral Susan Ford's fleet prepared to jump. Every available human warship had been recalled from Confederate space. "Jump calculations complete," reported Commander Ryan Grant. "But we'll arrive with only minutes to spare." "It will have to be enough," Susan said. "All ships, prepare for emergency jump." Battle stations. As her fleet vanished into hyperspace, a new signal appeared on her communication system. It was from Jack Russell. "Admiral, the Confederate forces are with us. Admiral Grispack is bringing what's left of their fleet to Earth." Susan allowed herself a small smile. Perhaps they weren't alone after all. On Roxy Prime, Captain Steve Miller and his team fought their way through the Imperial Palace. Joe Wilson had succeeded in accessing the Roxy command network, sending false orders to their ships and disrupting communications. "The Earth fleet?" Steve asked as they ran through the corridors. "Still under attack, but the Roxy coordination is breaking down," Joe replied, checking his device. "Some of their ships are pulling back, confused by the contradictory orders." They reached the central chamber, where Roxy scientists worked frantically around a strange device. The ring-shaped artifact pulsed with energy. "Stop them," Steve ordered. "Don't let them activate it." As his team engaged the guards, Steve targeted the main power conduits. The firefight was intense but brief. When it ended, the artifact's glow faded. "What is this thing?" Amy asked, looking at the ancient device. "According to their files, it's a control key for something much bigger," Steve said. "Something hidden at the edge of the galaxy." Above Earth, the battle reached its climax. Commander Patterson's station shook as another hit landed. A Roxy fleet had broken through the outer defenses and now moved toward the planet itself. Suddenly, space tore open behind the Roxy fleet. Admiral Ford's ships emerged from hyperspace, weapons already firing. From another direction came the Confederate fleet, led by Admiral Grispack. "The cavalry has arrived," Eric said with relief. The Roxy fleet found itself caught between 3 forces, the remaining Earth defenses in front, the human fleet behind, and the Confederate ships to the side. Their coordinated attack pattern fell apart as Captain Miller's team continued to disrupt their command network. In the presidential bunker, an aide rushed in. "Madam President, the tide is turning. The Roxy fleet is being pushed back." President Simmons placed her hand on the black box but didn't open it. "Continue monitoring. The Prometheus Protocol remains on standby." As the battle raged in space, Jack Russell stood on the bridge of a Confederate cruiser beside Admiral Grispack. After years of living as a spy, he now fought openly alongside both his peoples. "Your ships fight well," the Admiral told him. "The stories didn't do humans justice." "Stories rarely do," Jack replied. When the last Roxy command ship surrendered, cheers erupted across the Allied fleet. Earth had survived. Humanity had revealed itself to the galaxy not just as warriors, but as protectors. In the aftermath, Professor Zuchtel began writing the new history book. Its first line read, "Humans were never myths. They were simply waiting for the right time to return to the stars." But as Captain Miller studied the ancient artifact they had captured, he knew this was not the end. Whatever waited at the edge of the galaxy was still out there. And someday, they would have to face it. The emergency alarms rang throughout the Confederation Council building on Veldora Prime. Officials ran through hallways as security forces moved to their positions. In the main chamber, High Chancellor Vorkon stood frozen as he watched the screen. "It can't be," he whispered. On the screen, Vice Chancellor Dresmore stood with a group of Hraxi soldiers. His scales were a bright orange color, showing his excitement. "For too long, the Confederation has been weak," Dresmore said. "The Hraxi Empire offers strength. I have given them what they need to end this war." The transmission cut off. The room fell silent. "He has betrayed us," Admiral Grispak said, his voice tight with anger. But what did he give them? The answer came minutes later when human Lieutenant Diana Hayes burst into the room. "Earth's location has been compromised," she said. "A massive Hraxi fleet has just jumped to the Sol system. They bypassed all our front lines." Fear passed across her face. "They're attacking Earth directly." In the Sol system, Commander Eric Patterson stood on the bridge of the orbital defense station Olympus. Around Earth, 50 such stations formed the planet's first line of defense. Beyond them, a fleet of 300 ships waited. Hraxi fleet emerging from hyperspace reported his second in command. "Count is over 500 ships." Eric's jaw tightened. "Alert all stations. Begin civilian evacuation to the bunkers. And get me Admiral Ford." The space around Earth lit up as the Hraxi fleet opened fire. The orbital defense stations answered with powerful energy beams that cut through the first wave of enemy ships. "They came prepared," Eric said as he watched the battle unfold. "Their shields are stronger than our intelligence suggested." "Sir, we're getting a transmission from Earth Command," his communications officer said. "President Simmons is authorizing defensive pattern Alpha." Eric nodded grimly. "Release the drone fighters." From the stations and defense ships, thousands of small unmanned craft swarmed toward the Hraxi fleet. Each was armed with weapons that could damage even a large cruiser. On Hraxi Prime, Captain Steve Miller and his team moved silently through the Imperial Palace. After their rescue mission, they had received new orders: infiltrate the Hraxi homeworld and find out exactly what they were planning. "The command center should be through those doors," whispered Sergeant Peters. Steve checked his scanner. "Heavy security. We can't fight our way through." "We don't have to," said Corporal Joe Wilson, the team's tech specialist. "I can access their systems from this terminal. Just need a few minutes." As Joe worked, Steve received a priority message from Admiral Ford. "Hraxi attacking Earth. All teams execute Emergency Protocol 7. Steve's face hardened. "Joe, forget subtlety. Get me into their command network now." "What about the protocol?" Annie asked. "It means we're at war," Steve replied. "Full war. We take down their command structure by any means necessary." Joe's fingers flew over the terminal. "I'm in their network. But there's something strange here. These aren't normal battle plans." He pulled up files on his screen. "This is data about some kind of ancient technology. Coordinates, excavation plans, weapons specs." Steve looked over his shoulder. What he saw made his blood run cold. "This isn't just about Earth or the Confederation," he said. "They found an ancient weapons system that could destroy everything." In the data was an image that matched stories from human history. A massive ring-shaped device that, according to the Hraxi files, could tear open space itself. "Download everything," Steve ordered. "Then set the system to broadcast their command codes to all coalition ships." As Joe worked, Steve sent an encoded message to Admiral Ford. "Found proof. Hraxi seeking precursor weapon. Can disable their command network, but Earth still in danger. Activate Prometheus defense if necessary." He knew what that meant. If Earth fell, the human colonies would activate the Prometheus protocol, a weapon of last resort that would ensure the Hraxi victory would be hollow. Captain Steve Miller moved silently through the dark corridors of the Hraxi labor camp. 3 other human soldiers followed him, their special suits making them nearly invisible. Around them, alien prisoners slept in cramped cells. "There are at least 200 prisoners here," whispered Sergeant Amy Peters through their secure comm system. "We can't free them all." "We're not here for all of them," Steve replied. "Just the Confederate scientists. Find cell block D." They had been behind enemy lines for 2 days. The mission was simple but dangerous. Rescue the Confederate science team captured during the fall of Kelteri IV. According to intelligence, these scientists had been working on new shield technology. Sergeant Peters checked her scanner. "Cell block D is to the right. 4 guards. Take them quietly," Steve ordered. Within minutes, the guards were down, and the team reached the cells. Inside were 6 aliens of different species. They cowered at the sight of the humans. "We're not here to hurt you," Steve said, kneeling by the cell door. "We're with the Confederation Human Alliance." One of the aliens, a tall blue-skinned being, stepped forward. "You're the humans, the ones from the stories." "That's us," Steve said as he worked on the lock. "I'm Captain Miller. We're getting you out of here." Meanwhile, aboard the flagship U.S. Horizon, Admiral Susan Ford met with Confederate Admiral Grispack. They stood before a holographic display showing the front lines of the war. "The Hraxi have consolidated their forces here, and here," Susan said, pointing to 3 star systems. "They're preparing for a major push." Admiral Grispack studied the display. "Your intelligence is impressive, but why not strike them now, while they're regrouping?" "Because we need to understand what they're after," Susan replied. "They're not just conquering territory. They're looking for something." The Confederate admiral's 4 eyes narrowed. "How do you know this?" Susan hesitated, then decided to trust him with the truth. "Because we've been monitoring them for decades. They've been searching star systems in a specific pattern. Systems with unusual radiation signatures." On a different part of the ship, scientist Linda Rogers worked with a team of Confederate engineers. The laboratory was filled with equipment from both cultures. "Your power systems are remarkable," said Zevnar, a Confederate scientist. "How did you develop this technology?" 300 years of hiding gave us time to focus on research," Linda explained. "We didn't have to worry about wars or politics. We just built and learned." She pointed to the device they were working on. "This is what we call a phase shift generator. It can disrupt Hraxi shield frequencies, but we need your help to tune it to their newest ships." Zevnar moved his 4 hands over the device. "I think I can help with that. Before I was captured, my team discovered something about Hraxi shield modulation. They change in predictable patterns." Back at the labor camp, Steve's team moved quickly through the corridors with the rescued scientists. Alarms had not yet sounded, but time was running short. "The extraction point is 2 kilometers north," Steve said. "Our shuttle is hidden there." The blue-skinned scientist touched Steve's arm. "Wait. There's something you need to know. Something I discovered before the Hraxi attacked our world." "Tell me while we move," Steve said, urging the group forward. "The Hraxi aren't just taking resources and slaves," the scientist said. "They're searching for artifacts. Ancient technology from a species that vanished 50,000 years ago." "What kind of technology?" Steve asked, suddenly alert. "Weapons," the scientist replied. "Planet-killing weapons. And they believe they've found the location of the central repository." Steve's blood ran cold. He activated his long-range communicator. "Captain Miller to Admiral Ford. Mission successful, but we have critical intelligence. The Hraxi are after ancient weapons of mass destruction. I repeat, the Hraxi are seeking planet killers." As they reached the edge of the camp, Steve looked up at the stars. The war had just become much more dangerous than anyone had imagined. The Grand Meeting Hall on Veldora Prime had never hosted such a strange gathering. On one side sat the Confederation leaders, a mix of different alien species. On the other side sat the humans, so similar to each other yet completely foreign to everyone else in the room. Lieutenant Diana Hayes felt the stares of the aliens as she took her seat. As the cultural liaison officer, it was her job to help these species understand each other. She had studied Confederate cultures for years, but theory was different from reality. "They're afraid of us," whispered Colonel Frank Martinez beside her. "Can you blame them?" Diana replied quietly. "We appeared out of nowhere with warships, and we look exactly like the monsters in their children's stories." High Chancellor Vorkund opened the meeting. "We have many questions for our human guests, and we will answer them," said General Wright. "But first, we need to discuss the Hroxy threat. They've regrouped at Sector 7 and are preparing another attack." "How do you know this?" asked Admiral Grispack, his scales darkening with suspicion. "We've been watching for a long time," General Wright said simply. In the back of the room, Professor Zeichtal leaned toward Miravex. "This changes everything we thought we knew about galactic history." Miravex nodded. "I told you they were real." The meeting continued with tense exchanges. The Confederation leaders demanded to know where humans had been hiding. The humans asked about Hroxy military capabilities. Trust was thin on both sides. During a break, Diana approached the professor and Miravex. "I read your papers on human myths," she said to Zeichtal. "You were wrong about many things, but right about some too." The professor's 6 eyes blinked rapidly. "You read my work." "We've studied you for centuries," Diana explained. "While you told stories about us, we learned your languages, your cultures, your sciences. Why hide for so long?" Miravex asked. Diana's face grew serious. "When humans first developed faster than light travel, we found a galaxy at war. We were new, vulnerable. Our leaders decided to stay hidden, to watch and learn before revealing ourselves. On the colony world of Harmony's Edge, a different kind of meeting took place. Jack Russell welcomed human soldiers as they helped rebuild the damaged settlement. After years of living undercover, he could finally be himself again. "Captain Russell," called a voice. He turned to see Greg Harris, his old friend from Earth Intelligence. "I heard you were rescued from the Hroxy," Jack said, shaking his hand. "Welcome back to the land of the living." Greg looked around at the mix of humans and aliens working together. "Never thought I'd see the day we came out of hiding." "Neither did I," Jack admitted. "How are the aliens treating you?" "Better than expected. They're curious. Scared too, but mostly grateful." Greg lowered his voice. "I hear the Hroxy had some nasty plans for this sector. Something about resource extraction on a massive scale." Jack nodded. "That's why I've been asked to set up this colony as a joint base. Human and Confederate forces working together. Will it work?" Greg asked. "It has to," Jack replied. "The Hroxy aren't done yet." Back on Veldora Prime, the meeting concluded with a fragile alliance formed. The Confederation would provide intelligence and diplomatic channels. The humans would provide military support and technology. As Diana packed up her notes, Admiral Grispack approached her. "Your ships move in ways ours cannot," he said. "Your weapons cut through Hroxy shields like they aren't there." "We had time to develop our technology," Diana replied carefully. "And yet you chose to reveal yourselves now. Why?" Diana met his 4-eyed gaze steadily. "Because sometimes hiding isn't an option anymore." The Admiral studied her face. "The Hroxy found something, didn't they? Something that made you afraid." Diana didn't answer, but her silence told him enough. "Then we have more to fear than just this invasion," Admiral Grispack said quietly. "Yes," Diana finally replied. "Much more." On Veldora Prime, citizens went about their day unaware of the change about to happen. The blue-green sky was clear, the 3 suns shining brightly over the capital city. In the Great Plaza, aliens of many species walked, talked, and traded. Professor Zeichtal hurried across the plaza toward the council chambers. He had been summoned urgently, but not told why. As he walked, his communication device buzzed with news alerts. The Hroxy attacks had increased. 30 worlds now reported invasions. Inside the council building, chaos reigned. Officials ran through hallways. Security forces stood at alert. Professor Zeichel called a voice. He turned to see Miravex, his former student. "What's happening?" he asked. "Something big," she replied. "The Hraxi have broken through the outer defense lines. The Confederation fleet is scattered. But that's not why they called you." Before she could explain further, a guard approached them. "The Council requests your presence immediately," he said. In the Council chamber, High Chancellor Vorkon stood at the center. Around him, representatives from dozens of worlds argued loudly. When the Chancellor raised his 6 arms, the room fell silent. "We have received a transmission," he said. "It comes from... well, it's best you see for yourself." The main screen lit up. On it appeared a face that made Professor Zeichel gasp. The being had only 2 eyes, no tentacles, and a flat face with a small nose and mouth. It looked just like the human drawings from ancient legends. "I am General Paul Wright of the United Earth Defense Force," the being said. "We have observed the Hraxi attacks on your worlds. We offer our assistance." The council chamber erupted again. Some members shouted that this was a trick. Others demanded to know where these humans had been hiding. "Silence," shouted the Chancellor. Then he addressed the screen. "We have only stories of your kind. How do we know you are real, or that you can help?" General Wright smiled. "Look to your skies." Across the Confederation, on 100 worlds including Veldora Prime, the skies darkened as massive ships appeared in orbit. They were unlike any vessels seen before, sleek, powerful, and built on a scale that dwarfed even the largest Confederation cruisers. On Harmony's edge, Jack Russell stood outside the colony's command bunker. For days, they had fought off Hraxi ground forces. Now he looked up and smiled as human ships filled the sky. "It's about time," he said quietly. Aboard the U.S. Horizon, General Wright watched as his fleet took position above Veldora Prime. "No response from the Confederation yet," said Lieutenant Ben Howard. "Give them time," the general replied. "It's not every day your myths show up to save you." On another screen, he could see reports coming in from 100 battle zones. Human ships engaged Hraxi forces across Confederate space. The Hraxi, caught by surprise, were already retreating from many worlds. "Sir, we're getting reports from Admiral Ford's fleet," Ben said. "The Hraxi command ship at New Dakota has been destroyed. They freed the prisoners." Paul nodded. "And our people. Captain Harris is safe. So are the others." In the council chamber on Veldora Prime, Professor Zeichel stood frozen in shock. The beings from his lectures, the myths he had dismissed, were real. And their ships now filled the skies above the Confederation capital. "We need to respond," Miravex said, breaking the silence. "The Hraxi are at our doors, and the humans offer help." High Chancellor Vorkon turned to Professor Zeichel. "You are our expert on human myths. Are these beings trustworthy?" The professor looked at the screen, at the human general waiting for a response. Then he looked at Miravex, who had always believed. "The legends speak of humans as dangerous, resourceful, and unpredictable," he said finally, "but also as fierce protectors of those they consider friends." He took a deep breath. "I believe we should accept their help before the Hraxi return in greater numbers." The Chancellor nodded and turned back to the screen. "General Wright of Earth," he said, "the Confederation accepts your assistance." Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains on Earth, President Kate Simmons faced the United Earth government in emergency session. The massive chamber was carved from solid rock, a precaution from the days when humans feared discovery by alien civilizations. "Admiral Ford has requested permission to intervene in the Hraxi Confederation conflict," she said. Her voice echoed in the silent room. 50 representatives from Earth and its colony worlds sat in tiered seats, their faces serious. Defense Minister Alan Clark rose to speak. "Madam President, I must advise against this. For 3 centuries, we have remained hidden for good reason. The galactic political situation is complex. We aren't ready. Not ready? Admiral Ford's voice came through the communication system. Her image appeared on the main screen, transmitted from the U.S. Ranger. The Roxy are 20 light-years from New Eden Colony. If they continue their advance, they will find us regardless. Alan shook his head. We can relocate New Eden. The colony is small. And the next colony they find. And the next. Susan asked. We can't keep running forever. Chief Diplomat Olivia Martinez stood up. Her dark eyes scanned the room before she spoke. I've reviewed the reports from our agents in Roxy space. They are not just conquering these worlds. They are strip mining them and taking the populations as slaves. She tapped a control, and images appeared on everyone's screens. Planets with deep scars across their surfaces. Alien civilians in chains. Processing camps. The Roxy are not expanding for territory, Olivia continued. They are harvesting resources and people. This is not a war of conquest. It's something worse. The room fell silent as the representatives studied the images. President Simmons turned to the intelligence director. Do we have any update on our agents in Confederate space? We've confirmed that 4 of our deep cover operatives are in Roxy custody, he replied, including Captain Greg Harris on New Dakota Colony. If they break him, Alan began. He'll resist as long as he can, the intelligence director said. But we must assume the Roxy will eventually learn about us through him or the others. President Simmons walked to the center of the chamber. She was not a tall woman, but she carried herself with confidence and authority. For 300 years, we have watched from the shadows, she said. We left Earth's solar system expecting to find a peaceful galaxy. Instead, we found conflict and danger. We chose to hide, to build our strength, to prepare. She looked at each representative in turn. Our founders didn't hide out of fear. They hid to give us time. Time to build a fleet that could protect humanity. Time to develop technology that could keep us safe. They never intended for us to hide forever. Alan tried one more argument. The Confederation is not our ally. We know nothing about them except what our agents have reported. They are not our enemy either, Olivia countered. The Roxy are. President Simmons nodded. I've made my decision. Authorization for Operation Daybreak is granted. She turned to Admiral Ford's image on the screen. Susan, you have my authority to engage the Roxy forces and make contact with the Confederation. Save our people if you can. Yes, Madam President. Admiral Ford replied. One more thing, President Simmons added. We're done hiding. Show them what humanity can do. As the meeting ended, Olivia approached the president privately. Kate, she said, using her friend's first name away from the formal session. Are you sure about this? Once we reveal ourselves, there's no going back. President Simmons looked at the star map on the wall, showing humanity's hidden colonies among the vastness of the galaxy. The time for myths is over, Olivia, she said. For better or worse, the galaxy is about to learn that humans are very real. The emergency alarms on Harmony's edge wailed through the night. Jack Russell ran to the colony's command center, his heart pounding. The room buzzed with activity as colony staff worked at their stations. Report, Jack demanded, his voice steady despite his fear. Multiple ships just appeared in orbit, said Lisa Chen, the head of security. They're Roxy warships, at least 7 of them. On the main screen, Jack watched as the ships moved into attack formation. Their design was unmistakable. The curved, spiked hulls of Roxy battle cruisers. They're launching dropships, Lisa said. And we're not the only ones. We're getting distress calls from 3 other border colonies. Jack's face hardened. Send out the emergency signal to the Confederation. Then begin evacuation to the underground shelters. Before Lisa could respond, the first explosions shook the building. Far away on Veldora Prime, the Confederation Council chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives from 100 worlds shouted over each other as reports of attacks flooded in. The Roxy would never dare such a bold move, shouted one counselor, his tentacles waving in agitation. Yet they have, replied High Chancellor Vorkon. We have confirmed attacks on 17 border worlds so far, with more reports coming in by the minute. Miravex stood at the back of the chamber. She had come to present her research to a small committee, but that meeting was forgotten now. Her scales paled to a sickly white as she watched the fear spread through the council. Where is our fleet? Someone demanded. Scattered. This attack was well planned, said Admiral Grispak. The Hroxi knew exactly where our ships were. They struck at our weakest points. As the council argued, Miravex slipped away. She hurried to her small office in the archives building. If the Hroxi were attacking now, she needed to check something, a pattern she had noticed in her research. In her office, she pulled up the star chart where she had marked all reported sightings of human activity over the past century. Then she overlaid the current Hroxi attack locations. The pattern was clear. The Hroxi were attacking systems far from the supposed human territory, as if they were deliberately avoiding something or someone. Light years away, aboard the Earth flagship U.S. Ranger, Admiral Susan Ford reviewed the incoming intelligence. The massive bridge of the warship was quiet as officers worked at their stations, monitoring the developing crisis. The Hroxi have launched a full-scale invasion of Confederate space, reported Commander Ryan Grant. 17 colonies confirmed hit so far. Admiral Ford nodded. Her gray hair was cut short in military style, her blue eyes sharp as she studied the holographic display showing the attacks. And our observers? She asked. We've lost contact with 4 teams, Ryan said. They were on worlds hit in the first wave. Susan's jaw tightened. For 300 years, humanity had hidden in the shadows, watching the galactic community from a distance. Earth had spread to dozens of hidden colonies, built a massive fleet, and developed technology that surpassed anything the known galaxy possessed, all while remaining a myth, a scary story told to alien children. The Hroxi are expanding toward our space, Susan said. If they continue this push, they'll discover New Eden colony within months. What are your orders, Admiral? Ryan asked. Susan stood, her decision made. Contact Earth immediately. I need to speak with the President. This changes everything. On her private screen, she pulled up the file on Jack Russell. The man had once been Captain Jack Russell of Earth Intelligence, planted as a deep cover agent on Harmony's edge. Now his cover might be blown, along with decades of careful secrecy. Computer, show me the status of all our ships in the sector, she ordered. The display changed to show dozens of human warships, hiding in deep space, powered down to avoid detection. Each one was larger and more powerful than anything the Confederation or Hroxi had ever built. It might be time to show the galaxy that humans were not myths after all. Professor Zeichtal adjusted his breathing apparatus and looked out at the 100 students in his lecture hall. His 6 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of pride among his species. The holographic display behind him showed ancient cave paintings from a dozen worlds. And so we come to perhaps the most persistent legend in our galactic folklore, he said, tapping a control on his wrist device. The display changed to show crude drawings of bipedal creatures with no tentacles, no fur, and oddly flat faces. The species known as humans. A ripple of amusement passed through the hall. Even the most serious students couldn't help but find the subject entertaining. For 2,000 cycles, stories of these beings have spread across our Confederation, always described as having only 2 arms, 2 legs, and most absurdly, only 2 eyes. This earned proper laughter from the students, yet somehow these creatures supposedly built starships and weapons of terrible power. In the 3rd row, Miravex didn't laugh. The young xenorchaeologist's scales shifted to a deeper blue, showing her focus. She had spent 3 years studying patterns in these supposedly fictional accounts. Something about them felt too consistent to be mere stories. Most scholars agree these myths began as cautionary tales for young ones. Professor Zeichtal continued, "Behave, or the humans will come with their warships. Study hard, or you'll end up like the humans, extinct before achieving true intelligence. Miravex raised one of her 4 hands. The professor nodded to her. But what about the artifacts found on Kelter II? She asked. The metal alloys that don't match any known species technology. The professor's skin flushed orange with dismissal. Yes. Always there are unexplained items that true believers point to. Next you'll mention the famous human footprints from the Dural excavation. Those were proven fake, Miravex said. But the Kelter artifacts weren't. This class studies facts, not conspiracy theories, the professor said firmly. Fact. No confirmed human has ever been seen by any reliable witness. Fact. No planet matching Earth's described location exists in our star charts. These are stories, nothing more. Far from this academic debate, on the small agricultural world of Harmony's Edge, Jack Russell rubbed his tired eyes. The colony's night cycle had begun, but sleep wouldn't come. The former military man stared at the sensor readings on his desk. Computer, run the analysis again, he said. Analysis complete, the computer replied. Unknown vessels detected at edge of system for 3rd consecutive day. Configuration matches no known confederation or proxy design. Jack picked up his communicator. Get me Counselor Dresmore. Minutes later, the reptilian face of the Confederation counselor appeared on screen. Mr. Russell, this is the 5th report this month. Our patrol ships have found nothing in your sector. With respect, Counselor, your patrols aren't looking in the right places. Something's out there. These ships appear and disappear without using any known jump points. The counselor's scales rippled with annoyance. Perhaps your equipment needs maintenance. Harmony's Edge is remote. Equipment degrades. I maintained battle systems during the Centauri conflict. This equipment works fine. Then perhaps it's the mind operating it that needs rest. The counselor said. The Hroxy have been quiet for years. Don't see phantoms in the dark, Mr. Russell. After the call ended, Jack walked to the window. The colony's field stretched out below his office, crops swaying in the night breeze. 5,000 people lived here, most unaware of his concerns. He'd need to prepare quietly, without causing panic. Computer, begin inventory of defense systems, and send a message to my old friend Greg Harris on New Dakota Colony. Tell him we might have company soon. As he stared at the stars, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that something ancient and powerful was stirring, something that had been watching from the shadows for a very long time.